Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Yeah, it's funny. Nobody can figure it out. Nobody understands it. They're looking at Trump. Trump refuses all of a sudden to criticize Cruz. Trump is all of a sudden suggesting he might even pick Cruz as his vice presidential running mate if he wins the nomination. And everybody's saying, my gosh, what happened? What happened? Well, I'm going to tell you what happened. It's Friday, folks. Let's get rolling here.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
Yes, sirree, Bob. Open Line Friday. This is your day. If you're on the phone, if you're a caller, you determine what we talk about today. 800-282-2882. We pay for the call. We pay for you to be on hold all those hours. We always have. It's no big deal. I just thought I'd mention it for the heck of it. After all, we had a Democrat debate last night, and they want everybody else to pay for whatever they want. By the way, I'm going to do some analysis of this. I actually watched it last night. Not just watched it, I studied it last night. Figured it was about time, so stand by for that. It'll be worth it. If you want to send an email, lrushbo@eibnet.com is the email address. Super Bowl Sunday, we have the predatory Carolina Panthers against the Denver Broncos. They're horses, and they may be wild horses, but they're still victims. They're not predators. Panthers, mountain lions, cougars, what have you, they are predators. That would give you a hint as to the environmentalist wacko way to look at the game. Look at this from the Huffing and Puffington Post. This is the same guy, by the way, that had the story in USA Today earlier about how we all ought to feel guilty watching the Super Bowl because doing so is promoting concussions. Huffing and Puffington Post, the Carolina Panthers are the most unapologetically black team ever. Now, this is from the left. These are the people telling us that it's all the racism and all the bigotry is to be found in conservatism and the Republican Party, and yet every time you open your mind, open your eyes, and start reading or listening to things, here you get a bunch of racist or racial analysis of things. Carolina Panthers, the most unapologetically black team ever. Details coming up. Also, I have been really overwhelmed, and I understand this, with emails from people asking me to detail the battery life problem that I've been experiencing with all of my iOS devices the past month. Because battery life is it's a universal complaint that people have. And, folks, the problem I had is not something that it was not related to settings like no notifications or location services or background app refresh. It wasn't. It was much, much, much more severe. It was not. You couldn't fix it. You couldn't make a difference in it whatsoever by toying around with settings. It was far, far deeper problem than that, which is why it required installing a couple of profiles to create logs of behavior taking place on the 5 of the devices, and then the reams of data that was produced had to be examined in order to find the culprit. And I'm going to explain it at some point in the program today because people, I said yesterday, nobody cares, and a lot of people actually do. Battery life, a universal complaint that people have. But again, what I'm going to tell you, my solution was, I'm not advocating anybody do. My problem was drastic and totally outside the norm and could not be dealt with by standard, ordinary changes in settings or other behaviors. In fact, well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I am going to very soon, hopefully, have a section on my website for tech tips. Because I know you people in the stick to the issues crowd get very upset when I start talking about my passions that are not related to politics. Whatever they may be, the NFL, golf, my iOS devices. I can hear you. I can see you out there shouting at the radio and throwing things at it. Stick to the issue. Stick to it. I know you're out there. But this was a dramatic, I'd never seen anything like it, problem. And nobody else was experiencing it. And nobody had I mean, every suggestion was a suggestion that I could come up with myself. There was not one person who had one idea what was wrong. And had I not been able to get really deep help, I would have never figured this out. I would have had to just adjust to the fact that my iPhone 6S would die every 4 hours, which meant that it would just have to be constantly charging, make it unusable. So I'll detail that, too, as the program unfolds before your very eyes and ears. We've got the two campaigns going. But this, everybody's stumped today. Everybody's stymied. Everybody's curious, can't figure it out. All of a sudden, Donald Trump says he doesn't want to criticize Cruz anymore. All of a sudden, Donald Trump says, yeah, you know what I like, Ted? I might even have him as my vice president if I get the nomination. But wait a minute. Everybody say, you're thinking of suing him because he's from Canada. What the hell's going on? They can't figure out what happened. So they're assigning it, well, you know, maybe Trump's insane. And then they say, no, he's not insane, so what's going on here? Well, maybe he's just trying to keep everybody on their toes and off guard and not knowing what's coming next. No, that may be, but that's not what's going on here. Well, but then why? You know, he abandons Dr. Carson. Dr. Carson was his big friend, and then all of a sudden he doesn't care about Dr. Carson. He likes Ted Cruz. All of a sudden he's not gonna complain about what's going on, and they're all struggling to try to figure this out. And the answer can be found by going back to yesterday's program here on the EIB network. This is why. Now, I understand that the polling is hit or miss, and that 13 of them were wrong. I understand. 13 polls had Trump winning. And I've got nothing against Dr. Carson. I think Dr. Carson's one of the finest men alive today walking this planet. This whole episode, nevertheless, boggles my mind. This whole thing, manufactured as it is, just boggles my mind. We're on the verge here, we conservatives, of wresting control of the Republican Party from the establishment and get sidetracked with this stuff. It isn't helpful. I wish it would stop, but I'm not running all these campaigns. And I said even more than that. I got specific. I said this notion that you can't take a tweet that's found on CNN and spread the news around it without creating some kind of controversy is silly. It's a waste of time. It's a distraction. And I a couple of times yesterday, I just said, stop it. Stop this stuff. There's way too much going on to get distracted by this. We're too much time is spent. You know, it's okay to disagree with people. It's okay to have policy differences with them, but there's no reason to start excommunicating people, either from the party or from the movement, people who you know are conservative but may be wrong on an issue here or issue there. Fine, disagree with them all you want. Defeat them all you want. But this excommunication stuff and banishing them, I had enough of it yesterday. It's destructive. I mean, this election is too important. I'm rehashing much of what I said yesterday, adding a couple things to it. But really, there's just too much at stake here. And so I'd had it, and I've been telling people in my circle of friends that this stuff's starting to get embarrassing to me. There was no election stolen in Iowa, and all of this about, you know, I did hear from a guy named Bill Saraceno. Bill Saraceno goes way back to my days in Sacramento. Bill Saraceno lost his hearing, and he was one of the first people I talked to about what life was going to be like with a cochlear implant way back in 2000, whenever that was. And he was extremely helpful. He had gone to the house clinic just as I had. And he helped me to prepare for what hearing and life and getting along was going to be like, a cochlear implant, before I had mine surgically implanted. And then after that, I lost track of him. I got an email from him yesterday, first time in 12 years, and he is in, or was in, I guess he's still in California. He's working on the Carson campaign, and he was telling me there are people who had their votes shafted away from him, Rush. I heard you on the radio today saying that not one person's popped up to say that they were going to vote for Carson and didn't because of what Ted Cruz's campaign was doing. Well, Rush, I got a couple of them here, and you need to know this. So he was telling me that a couple of people had stood up. But I still haven't heard it or seen it, and it wasn't going to add up to 25,000 votes, which is what Carson needed to tie Rubio for third place. That wasn't going to happen. And furthermore, Carson outperformed what he was supposed to get if you believe in polling data. So the whole thing to me just seemed unnecessary. And I had the usual, you're just in the tank for Cruz. I'm not in the tank for anybody here. It's not my job to win a campaign for this. It's not my job to take people out of it either. It's not my job to make them win it or help them. It's not my job to see to it that they lose it. That's up to them. And that's always been my philosophy. But when I see really unfortunate time-wasting things like this, and it just feeds right into them. I mean, the drive-bys, here we're on the verge, like I said there, we're on the verge of wresting control of the party from the establishment, which is what has to happen for us conservatives. And now here we're in the process of trying to destroy 2 or 3 of them. Circular firing squad. So anyway, that's what I said yesterday. Last night, CNN, Anderson Cooper 360, interviewing Donald Trump. Cooper said, you came in second in Iowa to Ted Cruz. Let's talk about Cruz. You basically accused him of fraud, stealing the election in Iowa. You talked about wanting a new election there. Have you actually spoken to Republican Party officials about that?
No, look, I'm into New Hampshire now. It's just one of those things. It was sort of a lot of strange things. And, I like Ben Carson very much. And he got pretty roughed up, frankly, although it affected me maybe more than Ben. But I'm so much, because I've been now here for 2 days, I'm so much into New Hampshire, that I don't care about that.
Well, that's what happened. He doesn't care about it. He was moving on. Said what he had to say about it, got his message out, thinks Cruz is from Canada and is a fraud, and is now moving on. It's dropping it. But the media is not happy. That's why, folks. Are you saying that you have... Well, who else did? Nobody can figure it out. I'm giving you a possibility, certainly. So then Anderson Cooper, who the media is the last group of people who want to see this happen. The media want to see Trump loaded for bear. The media deathly afraid of Cruz. And they're afraid of Trump. And they're going to end up being afraid of Rubio at some point. They want Cruz taken out. They're frustrated. The media is frustrated. They haven't been able to take out Republican frontrunners yet. And the Republican frontrunners in waiting are at the bottom of the pile. The media candidates of ours they prefer can't get any traction. They're frustrated. So here comes Trump aiming at Cruz. They loved it. Anderson Cooper says, oh, no. But wait, Donald, you think Ted Cruz intentionally was spreading false information, right? How can you do this?
I don't care. I mean, I don't want to even say, let's see what happens. I guess people are looking at it. Who cares? We're into here. I picked up a lot of delegates. I was second. I picked up one less than he did. So that's not going to be even a factor. But this is the place that I'm focused.
Right. He's focused on New Hampshire now. So everybody is running around. What happened? Why did there's a possibility for you? By the way, Cruz, this guy is so sharp. He is so quick. Did you hear a reporter tried to, and they ought to give up trying. No reporter on earth is going to be able to outwit in a match of wits Ted Cruz. They're not going to be able to sabotage the guy. A reporter kept hounding him about this dirty trick. Reporters said, but it's a dirty trick. It's a dirty trick to confuse voters. Don't you think it's a dirty trick to confuse voters? And Cruz said, no. We're not going to scapegoat anybody. This reporter wanted to know, you're going to fire anybody. No, we're not going to escape anybody. I would note that the news story that our team passed on was true and accurate. CNN reported it. Yeah, but it reports a dirty trick, right? Don't you think it's a dirty trick? I mean, how can you do that? That's a horrible thing to do. Cruz, is it a dirty trick to pass on your news stories? You're in the journalism business. Would you think it was a dirty trick if I was forwarding an ABC story? It's where this reporter worked. Or is it only a dirty trick when I pass on CNN stories? And the reporter because Cruz said, hey, I didn't do a damn thing. Carson's people called CNN. CNN put something up. We saw it. We used it. If there's a dirty trick, it's you people in the media putting it up in the first place. So Cruz is saying to this ABC reporter, oh, really? It's a dirty trick to pass on your news stories? You're in the business. Would you think it was a dirty trick if I was forwarding an ABC story? Or is it just a dirty trick to pass on CNN stories? Brief timeout. We come back. The Democrat debate, and as I said, studied it, and it was painful. Folks, I'm not kidding. It was painful on so many levels. I literally felt like I was a visitor from someplace and was not at all living in the world they were talking about. These people sounded like they were in a foreign country. I mean, it was that striking. It was beyond anything that happens in my day-to-day world, listening to these two. And it was Grandma and Grandpa just arguing, and it was I suffered through this. And I'm going to explain to you why. Get started on it. We come back. It is Open Line Friday. And I am your host, the all-knowing, all-caring, all-sensing, all-feeling, all-concerned, all-everything, Maharishi. Okay, the Democrat debate. Polling data, by the way, Bernie Sanders now leads Clinton by 20 points in New Hampshire. Quinnipiac University poll out today says Bernie Sanders nearly tied with Hillary Clinton in a nationwide poll. Now, just for me, just a quick overview, I thought Hillary cleaned his clock last night, but that's not what they think. What I think doesn't matter. Folks, you and I, I'm just here to tell you, you and I have nothing in common with the people watching that debate last night. And you have to watch this in order to be able to understand. It's such a different world in which they're all living and some working. Many of their voters do not work. It's key to understand this. But the thing that you have to be able to do to successfully empathize with the average Democrat voter, and I'm not talking about elite, rich Wall Street Democrats or Hollywood Democrats. I'm talking about the Democrat middle class, lower middle class rank and file. You have to be able to watch this and understand the environment and attitudes they have watching it, which you and I do not have. We do not think like they do. We're not fatalists. We're not depressed. We're not defeatists. We're not victims. We don't think everything that's going wrong is somebody else's fault because they're specifically targeting us. The liberal mindset, as it exists today, is absent happiness. There is none. Add to that, after 7 years of what was to be the fix for everything wrong, not just in America, but in the world, they're even angrier. They live with the reality, probably subconsciously, that everything they voted for and believed was going to happen, all these great things that were going to get fixed are worse. First African-American president has made no positive difference whatsoever. They're faced daily with the reality, which they probably do not admit, that everything they believe in tanks. But that's not even half of it. Hang on. And look, there's Obama out now, and he's hailing these fraudulent unemployment numbers released today. He's out there saying the first time unemployment rate is below 5% in 8 years. It's at 4.9%. 151,000 new jobs are created. It's just a lie. It's total fraud. What is this first time unemployment rate? Well, we talk about first time, so we don't have to talk about the people who've been unemployed for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, so we don't talk about them. So, yeah, the number of people unemployed for the first time, under 5%. Add those to the 94 million Americans who can't find jobs, and it's not a pretty picture. But there he is. He's out there claiming credit for it. And he's told anybody, State of the Union show, that anybody who tells you that this economy is not good is crazy or lying or whatever. And Hillary Clinton spent the whole debate last night telling everybody how the economy sucks. That's one of the many things. You watch this and you don't, I mean, what is she complaining about? She and her party have been running this country for 7 years, and she dares to detail all that's gone wrong with it. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. To watch this debate last night, I tried to assume the attitude, mental psyche of your average middle-class Democrat watching it. And the thing that you have to do doing that, you have to understand who the Democrats are today. What is their base like? They are perpetual and constant victims, folks. Many of them are poor, but even the ones who aren't poor feel they are poor. They have invested their entire lives hoping others are going to do things for them. And, of course, nobody gets anywhere doing that. So when it doesn't work out, you feel like you've been victimized. You feel like you've been taken advantage of and forgotten. It's never your fault. They think they've been victimized by all of the isms: sexism, racism, bigotry, homophobia, whatever it is. There is some sort of explanation that is rooted in negative behavioral traits of others who are doing mean things to them, or who are standing in their way of getting anywhere, or who are purposely targeting them and keeping them down. Their misery, and that's what their lives are, their misery in their minds is explained by all of these mean, powerful forces out to deny them. Big oil, big pharmaceutical, big retail, you name it. All of these, the Republican Party, talk radio, all of these powerful forces are arrayed against them and keeping them pinned down to where they can't accomplish anything. In their minds, they should have been great successes. They're the smartest people in the world. They're smarter than you. They're smarter than people running the country, but they've never gotten a break. Everybody's given them the raw deal every day of their lives. It was either their teachers or their school or a coach or a parent. Somebody failed to see how brilliant they are, how great they are. Then it was their boss, if they ever had a job, or their employer who didn't make them company president, didn't promote them, didn't give them a raise, maybe fired them. And then you throw the cops in this. They hate the cops. The cops are out to get them. It's hopeless. Their own environment, the people they live among, the places they go to school, the places they go shop, everywhere they go is aligned and arrayed against them. They are victims of this conspiracy or that, and I don't mean tinfoil hat conspiracy. They're victims of unseeable, invisible, powerful forces that are arrayed against them in so many ways it's impossible, don't you know, to overcome. The only remedy, therefore, is the government to give them the things that they are being denied because of all of these mean, powerful forces that have stacked the deck against them. Everything that's too expensive is because somebody is trying to screw them out of being unable to have it, be it higher education, be it a nice car, be it health care, be it child care. All of that stuff should rightfully have been theirs, and it should have been easily acquired, but it's being denied them. Usually by the rich who stole all of the stuff from them at one point. This is how they think. Now, you made Russia crazy. Nobody thinks this way. They do, folks. It is the only way a debate like last night makes any sense, where you have a battle between two old grandparent types arguing over who can give away the most, while punishing the most people at the same time. The only way a debate like that makes sense is if I have nailed the attitudinal psychology of these average Democrat voters. Housing. Well, who can afford that? There ought to be subsidies or vouchers or giveaways of some kind because they can't afford these things, and it's all because somebody else is making it impossible for them. The rich, however, they've got all this. They ought to be paying for it. And the rich are the ones that are squeezing them to boot. So the rich ought to be paying for it. You've heard liberals talk about access. Usually you hear them talk about how they're being denied access to something. That is how the liberal mind, the middle class, liberal mind thinks. Such as access to, shall we say, reproductive rights or reproductive health care. Reproductive health care. They're being denied access. Now, that phraseology makes it look like they're being denied rights, like they're being denied constitutional rights, human rights that are guaranteed to everybody. What denied access means when these people use it is nobody's giving it to them. Little test. Going forward, when you listen on TV, any liberal on TV start talking about how they're being denied access to this or that, what they mean is that nobody's giving it to them. Now, the Democrat elite, the rich Democrats, they are in the same boat, but they're unhappy for different reasons. I'm not going to mess with them. I'm not going to bother with them right now because the focus here is the people that watched that debate last night. The Democrat elites are the ones. I had to laugh. I'll just give an example. Here's Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, and they're both ragging on Wall Street last night. Wall Street pays for the Democrat Party, and both of them know it. I've got a list of all of the Wall Street. No, they're ragging on Goldman Sachs last night, and the Blankfeins, Lloyd Blankfein, who runs the place, and his wife are two of the biggest donors of the Democrat Party. Wall Street props up the modern-day Democrat Party. Wall Street does not support Republicans, and yet here these two are last night, ragging on Wall Street like nobody ever has before. The reason? They know the people watching the debate are blaming Wall Street and all the other fat cats for denying them what they should have had their entire lives and preventing them from ever having a hope of getting whatever they want or need in the future. Therefore, somebody better use government to get it to them. The liberal mindset today has no happiness. There is no joy. They're all victims. Somebody's to blame for their misery and their lack of future. Add to it 7 years of what they thought was going to be a socialist utopia. Barack Hussein Obama. No more war. We're going to fix global warming. We're going to close Guantanamo Bay. We're not going to do any more torture. We're going to put people at Wall Street. We're going to put them in jail. We're going to finally get even with all of these people who've made life so miserable. And instead, what do they realize every day? They realize Obama's in bed with these guys they think ought to be in jail. And subconsciously they realize that everything they voted for, and they always vote for, but they voted for in 2008, everything they voted for has made things worse. The country's getting worse. Even they admit it's on the wrong track. Different reasons from you and I. But point is, they had their people in power the last 7 years. They had people in power the other party never even tried to stop. Now, these people I'm talking about think the Republican Party is stopping the great Obama each and every day. They think Obama's still an outsider, doing his best to overcome these powerful forces. All of these powerful forces of denial, by the way, happen to be Republicans. In your average, warped, liberal mind. Not only is there no happiness in the liberal mindset, if you watch that debate last night, there's no pursuit of happiness. Neither Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton are about happiness. They're not about finding it. They're not about promoting it. They're not about ensuring it. They're not even cognizant of it. Happiness did not even show up either in terms of how Bernie and Hillary portrayed themselves or in terms of what they talked about. What they talked about last night was anger and how people are getting shafted, how people are getting screwed. Hillary is progressively angrier and louder as every day goes by because there is more racism, there is more bigotry, there's more inequality, there's more denial of rights for women, for Hispanics, for African Americans. It never ends. It only gets worse. And the free market is to blame. Bernie Sanders talks about this sustained, rigged economy. That's how he opened last night. This economy is rigged. It's rigged by the people on Wall Street and whoever else. And I'm saying, who rigged the economy? Who possibly can rig the economy? If you have on one hand a free market, a regulated free market, how in the world do you rig it? There's only one place. There's only one entity that can rig the market, folks. It's called Uncle Sam. The United States government is who rigs the economy. The tax code is a way to rig the economy. It's a government creation. Regulations, that's how you rig the economy. It's how you pick winners and pick losers. The market doesn't pick winners and losers. You have to win or lose. It's up to you in the market. The government coming in, picking winners and losers, is rigging the market. And the government has been rigging the market for as long as there have been liberals in it. Free markets, by definition, rig nothing. Free markets reward smart. Free markets reward entrepreneurism. Free markets reward hard work. And not all the time, by the way. It's another thing these people think. They think we're full of it because we believe these old bromides, hard work and all that, and devotion and ambition pays off. It's a lot more than that. Doesn't work for everybody, of course. Not everybody's a multimillionaire. Not everybody never has been, never will be. And because of that, they're able to universally criticize it and claim it's illegitimate and so forth. The government's the biggest risk to our economy. And it ain't even close. There's nothing that comes even, you can't even see something else in the binoculars when you're looking out there to find out that possible things could rig, damage U.S. economy. U.S. government's it, and there's nothing else that you are going to see. It isn't Wall Street rigging the economy. It's Pennsylvania Avenue. But wait, Rush, what about quantitative easing? I've heard you say, right, but Wall Street, they just had their hands open, but it was Washington that decided to print all that money. It was Washington decided to give it to them. By the way, here's Bernie and these guys ragging on Goldman Sachs and so forth. You ever found it strange that practically every former CEO of Goldman Sachs becomes Treasury Secretary in Democrat administrations? And Democrat Treasury Secretary comes up with QE3, Federal Reserve, so forth. They're taking the money that's coming into Washington and giving it to their friends. Are all Democrats doing this? Wall Street funds the Democrat Party. Hillary said she's never been influenced by mega donations. Then why are you accepting it? They're not giving you money because you're pretty. They're not giving you money because they like having you come by and have a drink with them because you're dull and boring. They're not giving you money because they want to pal around with Bill and maybe get some of the action he rejects, talking about babes. They're giving you money, Hillary, because exactly right, you are going to pay them back with influence in kind if you ever get elected. It was just full of crap last night. And by the way, folks, this is why I cringe when I hear Republicans talking about the need to cross the aisle. And like I heard Lindsey Graham this year, we need to go out and get the Hispanic vote. We need to go get more of this vote and that vote. It's not possible. It's not possible to get them. When you understand who they are, they're not reasonable. They're not going to be able to listen to a pitch from Lindsey Graham or anybody else saying, no, we're not who you think we are. We're nice and so forth. That's it. They're not even going to get close. These people are alien to us, folks. The average middle class, lower middle class Democrat voter is so victimized, and they're not angry at us because they think we're racist. They're angry at us because we're the reason they're failures. We're the reason they've never amounted to anything. We're the reason they don't have anything. There's no amount of reaching out to them. That's their safety blanket, to be victims, to have us to blame for their failure. They're never going to admit that we all of a sudden are nice guys and worthy of their vote. That would destroy the entire foundation they've created in order to stay alive, even though it's miserable. Here's Leslie in Lafayette, Indiana, as we hit to the phones. Great to have you up first today, Open Line Friday. Hi.
Hi, Russ.
Hey.
Love your show.
Thank you.
Hey, you're talking about a section of society that constantly is, being victimized, they think. They don't have enough. They don't have what everybody else has. Now, most of them, of course, are being housed. They're being fed. They're given phones. I'm not really sure how you can be a victim when you're being given everything. But in my opinion, it's the working class that is being victimized by our government. We right now in our family, we farm.
No, I understand. I hate to interrupt, but I know where you're going, and I've only got 30 seconds here. Let me explain this. You're saying, hey, we're victims too, so are they. Different ball of wax. Even though they're getting all the free stuff, that's not making them happy. That's the point. The more of it they get, the more miserable they are. The more success their party has at the polls, the more in debt we go, the more angry they are. You don't want that. You want government out of your way so that you and your farm can prosper as a result of your ingenuity, your hard work, your devotion. They're not like that. They want you punished with higher taxes or whatever else. They're not wanting government out of their lives. They want more of it. Open Line Friday, hosted by me, your guiding light through times of trouble and confusion, through murkiness and despair, and even the good times, which we find here. Chronicle those as well. Sit tight, folks. Much more right around the proverbial corner. Greetings. Welcome back, my friends. Great to have you here. Rush Limbaugh, the EIB Network, the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies, where among the many and varied things that we do each and every day here is happily pursue happiness and happily find happiness and happily behave in happiness without any guilt, unlike our Democrat idiot friends.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
Yes, sirree. 800-282-2882 if you want to be on the program. And remember, Open Line Friday, there are scant restrictions. Very few restrictions on what you can talk about, not like there are Monday through Thursday. But Monday through Thursday, you don't even know what the restrictions are because it just happens. That's the brilliance of how we put this together. But Friday, the calls can be all over the ballpark and not seem to make sense whatsoever because whatever people want to talk about is fair game. Sticking with the Democrat side of things here for just a little longer, and I want to back up some of what I have said so far with some sound bites from this thing last night, because if I had to watch this thing, you people are going to have to put up with some of it too. And this was the first one, I must be honest, the first one I actually sat down and watched and tried to look at it as if I were a Democrat voter. And it takes a lot of effort, folks, because we are not who they are. I am not kidding. Watching this thing last night was an out-of-body experience. I really felt like I was in a foreign country, listening to a foreign language. Not, obviously it was English, but it was so alien from the beginning to the end. From the attitudes of the moderators and the questions, the answers, just the whole atmosphere, it didn't feel like my country. It was, obviously, but it didn't feel like it. When it was over, Rachel Maddow gets up and starts hugging. She walked over, hugged Hillary, hugged Bernie. She got and hugged her grandparents. It was really, really striking. It was just two grumpy old white people, like I know everybody loves their grandparents, but there are times, your grandparents, these people were just get off my lawn, miserable kind of dour. Hillary tried to jazz it up with a lot of makeup and smiles. And look, speaking objectively, Bernie Sanders can't hold a candle to her. I don't care what you all think. And if you've heard any discussion today about how Hillary was weak here or weak there, she stomped all over the guy last night. From my perspective, not probably from theirs. That's the key. Bernie's rising in the polls. They're really worried. The Democrat establishment is going to do to Bernie what they've been trying to do to Trump and trying to do to Cruz. They are scared to death on the Democrat side of Bernie Sanders. Because in their own odd way, they don't understand it, even though they, just like our establishment, are the sole reason why there is a Bernie Sanders on their side. From thehill.com, Sanders nearly tied with Clinton nationwide poll. And this was known last night. I think this is another reason why Hillary was even more hostile. And she was generally a raging mess last night, but that's to us. She was far more professional at the same time, far more seasoned. She was clearly, so many times Bernie turned to her and talked of his respect and admiration. It was clear to me that when this is all over, Bernie Sanders has been a placeholder. From the Democrat establishment point of view, they may be in the process of having screwed themselves because Democratic presidential hopeful Bernie Sanders has dramatically cut into the nationwide lead of Hillary Clinton, according to a Quinnipiac poll. The poll finds that Hillary leads the race 44-42. That's margin of error. So you could say that they're tied. The last Quinnipiac poll in December, Hillary led Bernie 61-30. That's a 29-point margin that has been reduced to a 2-point margin since December. Now, what has happened? What has gone on over there in that party to bring this about? My contention is that none of us know. These two people to us are the same as they've always been. Odd, dangerous, genuine weirdos. But for the people in the Democrat Party, the middle class, lower middle class, Bernie Sanders has become a hero. And once again, what's being demonstrated, something that you'll never get a picture of in the drive-by media, is that Hillary Clinton is not highly admired, revered, loved, and adored by the Democrat Party base. We're seeing it again, just like we saw it in 2008. Tim Malloy, the assistant director of the Quinnipiac University poll, said Democrats nationwide are feeling the burn as Senator Bernie Sanders closes a 31-point gap to tie Hillary Clinton. The poll also finds that Bernie Sanders matches up better with top Republican candidates than Hillary Clinton does. The Quinnipiac poll found that Hillary has a 17-point unfavorable rating. That's only better than Trump in that category, whose unfavorability rating in this poll is 25 points. Sanders has a 9-point favorable rating nationwide, only trailing Rubio, who is seen favorably by a 14-point margin in the Republican side. The survey sample was 484 Democrats, and the margin of error is 4.5%. Now, Hillary and Bernie both last night started dumping on Wall Street and Goldman Sachs and any other big bank name they could think of. And yet, Goldman lobbyists, Goldman vice presidents, Goldman CEO and a CEO wife are all Hillary donors. And they prop up the Democrat Party. Hillary Clinton said Wednesday night of Goldman Sachs, they're not giving me very much money now. I can tell you that much. No, they just paid her $685,000 to speak. When she was asked about that, she said, well, that's what they offered. It turns out, no, that wasn't true. These people lie all the time. Their base doesn't care, folks. To their base, Hillary or Bernie lying, if that's what it takes to beat us back, we are the focus of evil, and therefore there are no rules limiting what they can do to beat us. So if they have to lie, all the better. And if they're good at it, that's even better. They're not worried about the morality of their leaders, obviously. They're not worried about the character. All they want is somebody who is going to say things to let them know that they agree that these people have been shafted. They've been shafted by an unfair, unjust America with powerful forces that are denying them everything in life. And Hillary and Bernie come along and promise to make up for it by giving them what they have been denied by these powerful forces. And if they have to lie in order to get there, that's fine. Turns out that this $685,000 fee, it's not what they offered. Her speaking agency, she's got a speaking at a Harry Walker agency. Everybody that does public speeches has an agent that goes out and gets these things. I, of course, have never had an agent because my phone rings, but I don't do any that I charge for. Never have. That's another thing that burns me. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, $685,000. Her normal price, the normal cost to get Hillary Clinton's $200,000 to $250,000. And I run around and I do these things for nothing when I used to do them. Maybe for a little ticket, whatever ticket action there was, but nothing like this. It turns out that the $685,000 is not what Goldman Sachs offered. It's what the Harry Walker agency negotiated. Now, in the debate last night, it came up that Hillary was asked if she would release the transcripts of some of these speeches that she's made, and she wouldn't do it. Let me find the audio soundbite here that, let's see, grab number 13 from the debate last night. F. Chuck Todd. Have you noticed the comb over there? I haven't seen Chuck Todd in a while. It must be good and getting bad up there. Well, I know. It's not relevant. It doesn't matter. I hadn't seen Chuck in a long time. And it looked like a Kia Pet growing. Well, anyway. Chuck Todd, moderating the debate, said, Madam Secretary, are you willing to release the transcripts of all of your paid speeches? We do know through reporting that there were transcription services for all of those paid speeches. In full disclosure, would you release all of them?
I will look into it. I don't know the status, but I will certainly look into it. But I can only repeat what is the fact, that I spoke to a lot of different groups with a lot of different constituents, a lot of different kinds of members about issues that had to do with world affairs. I probably described more times than I can remember how stressful it was advising the president about going after bin Laden.
Oh, we can just imagine the stress. Can you just, what is a stress reliever? What do people take to get rid of stress? They probably had 5 bottles of the stuff, whatever it was. The stress of advising, now, on one hand, I might be able to be convinced that there was stress getting Obama to go get Osama, because Obama would rather play golf. In fact, didn't they have to drag him off the golf course to get in there to watch the actual raid? Anyway, she won't release the transcripts of her paid speeches. Can you imagine that question even coming up? Now, why do you think she won't release the transcripts of paid speeches? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you exactly why. It's not because there's anything classified in them. It's not because there's anything embarrassing like giving out phone numbers to women to get to Bill. There's nothing like that in there. The reason she won't release the transcripts is because the speeches are so damn bad, because they're probably so boring, they're probably so suck-up. Those speeches are probably, if they released the transcripts, it would be obvious why she's going out speaking to these groups. She's sucking up, she's promising them things, They just paid her a lot of money to show up and speak. I'm sure she's telling them what all they can expect for it in a disguised way, things that she wants to do policy-wise if she's elected. She doesn't want to give away the transcripts here because it would indicate there's a quid pro quo going on. It would be an incredible embarrassment to boot to see how dull they are, just like a Hillary book signing is, or your average Hillary speech. See, Hillary says that when she goes out and speaks to these groups that she is showering them with invaluable wisdom, like this reference to all the stress that there was advising Obama on getting bin Laden. What she can't afford is for the transcripts to be released and people to find out what snoozers her speeches are, because then it's going to look like they're no-show speeches. Just showing up, maybe they might find out the speeches go 10 minutes, and she's still getting all of the money. They're not going to release transcripts of speeches with Hillary lecturing Wall Street companies on stuff, because she doesn't go lecture Wall Street companies on stuff. She doesn't talk to the Wall Street companies in these speeches like she talks about them in these debates. And that's why they will not release the transcripts. Because if they did, these Democrat voters would find out she's in bed with, figuratively speaking, of course. It's Open Line Friday. El Rushbo and Half My Brain tied behind my back just to make it fair as we meet and surpass all audience expectations every day. We go to Provo, Utah. This is Richie. Richie, great to have you on the program, sir. Hi.
Hi, Megadeth, Rush. I have got a question or comment on Trump, just kind of dismissing the primary. But I see Trump as a drive-by candidate. He fires a couple shots at Cruz for being a Canadian, then steps back and says, hey, it's not me. I'm not sure about that. And then he makes this stink and fires a whole bunch of shots at Cruz, not stealing the primary. And then today he steps back. Oh, I'm fine with that. It's water under the bridge. But I think, I know you're not in the tank for anyone, but I think your impartiality or friendship with Trump is kind of making you miss things like that.
Oh, no. In fact, I don't know how long you've been on hold. I announced my theory for why Trump is doing what he's doing today. But did you miss that?
I heard you say that he was kind of, it's in the past.
No, it's because I yesterday chided all these guys for acting like children and to straighten up. I mean, this is politics, for crying out loud. We're on the verge here of wresting control of the Republican Party from the establishment, and we're about to open a circular firing squad here over a CNN tweet. It was just silly. But you know what? I like your analogy here, Richie, that Trump is a drive-by candidate. Let's explore this. So your theory is that he comes out of Iowa. He was expecting to win it. 13 polls had him winning it, but he didn't. So he's naturally upset. He's a winner. He doesn't like losing. And so he sees this thing happen to Carson. He decides, you know what, I'm going to glom onto that. So he starts leveling all these allegations at Cruz and gets the media on it. The media then starts focusing on Cruz. And then after a couple of days, Trump backs us up. Fine with me, knowing full well the media is not going to give it up. They're going to stick with it. Trump can move on to other things, thereby satisfying people on his side, get nervous when he does that stuff, get back to the issues, the wall, whatever it is, while the media continues to take out Cruz. That's your
theory. He knows they're not. He knows that the media is not going to let it go. He knows that Cruz supporters are not going to let it go, and Trump his own supporters are not going to let it go. They're still going to attack Cruz for that, and I think he can move on to other things. He's done the drive-by candidate thing here.
Are you a Trumpster?
I am not a Trumpster.
Who are you?
I prefer Cruz, maybe Rubio.
Cruz or Rubio? Okay, all right. Well, I like your theory. I as one who has invented the whole concept of drive-by media, I can see where you would pick up on that with Trump. You may have a point. There may be something to this. You know, one thing we know that Trump is not insane. He's not stupid. He loves keeping people off balance. He loves having people sort of on guard, trying to predict where he's going next, and he loves being able to fool people into where he's going next. And he is a super pro at manipulating and owning the media. So you may have a point. I'm going to state again, I shouldn't have to do this. Run the risk of doing this and even sounding a certain way. I wish sometimes you all could see the email that I get after any given show. Because it's routinely filled with people either thanking me or really, really mad at me for either being for their candidate or not being for their candidate. And it changes day to day. I can't tell you the number of people who are sending me notes warning me about Rubio. But I'm also getting email from all over the world. Hey, Rush, I like what you said about Rubio. Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, San Francisco, San Diego, you name it, all over the place. I haven't endorsed anybody. All I am, for very simple to understand me, I'm one of the most easily understood because I tell you everything I believe and think. I just don't believe in excommunicating people from our movement. I have never liked this idea that we have this tendency to throw people out, throw people overboard, not just for a cycle, but forever. I don't like it. Talking about people on our side, we are not talking about reprobate ne'er-do-wells. And it just bugs me when I see otherwise. We have an audio soundbite here from Obama, the press conference I mentioned an hour ago. He went out there and he was praising his economy. He was heralding first-time unemployment rate at being under 5% for the first time in 7 years. That's essentially since he took office. The first time. When have you ever heard that referred to? The first-time unemployment rate is now at 4.9. What's that? Has anybody any memory of hearing the unemployment rate referred to as the first-time unemployment rate? Well, there's a reason he said it. It's because it's the only way you can ignore the 94 million Americans not working, not in the labor force. The first time, in other words, people applying for unemployment benefits for the first time, 5% added to the 15% who have been getting unemployment for 4 years and have run out. He's not talking about them. So this is a sleight of hand thing. They released the numbers, 4.9% unemployment rate with 151,000 new jobs created. This is an abject joke. It's a total joke. And it comes the day after Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders vie for the Democrat nomination by telling their voters they know how truly rotten this economy is. And yet here's Obama out there heralding it today. Very next day, less than 24 hours, there's Obama out there essentially contradicting everything his two replacements, would-be replacements, are out saying. And watching CNN on this was interesting, too. After Obama finished and had told everybody how great the economy is and how great the jobs picture is, CNN cut immediately to a story on how the bottom's falling out of Wall Street, meaning they went straight from Obama to negative economic news on Wall Street, which they used to not do. They would not do anything to contradict Obama. If he's got there talking about how great the economy is, they would either follow up with something else or find something in the economy they could say was reflective of what Obama had just said or illustrative. But he was answering questions, and as a reporter from Fox News, Kevin Corke, said, Mr. President, how can you improve workforce participation levels? See, I am convinced that the drive-by media, before we started talking about the labor force participation rate, had no idea what it was. I don't think, like baseline budgeting, I don't think until we spent many days detailing here, I don't think too many people really knew what it was. Likewise, the unemployment rate, there are two numbers they release, U3 and U6. And I think get the two confused, but U3 is what they talk about every day. U6 is the real number. U3 is the first-time unemployment. U6 is the sum total of everybody, even those who have given up looking for a job. And that number's 15%. African-American community, you know what that number is? 25%. And if you even narrow it down to unemployed African-American youth, folks, it's so bad as to be obscene. There isn't any robust economic news that Obama can talk about except, and not even now can he do that, Wall Street. So anyway, Kevin Cork says, Mr. President, how can you improve workforce participation levels? Because as much as people talk about the recovery, so few Americans are now, relatively speaking, in the job force, in the job market, especially compared to 2008. It's amazing this guy got out of there without a black eye. Because basically what this reporter said to Obama, you know, your first-time unemployment rate number doesn't mean anything because there's 94 million Americans not working. What are you going to do about getting them back into the labor force? Here's what Obama said.
We're still at a point where the labor participation rate is lower than it has been historically. Some of that's explained by demographics. The population's getting older, and so you would expect that there is some decline, but it's not fully explained by Americans getting older. Some of this is still the hangover from what happened in 2007, 2008. I get a lot of letters from middle-aged workers who got laid off. Aren't confident about their current skills, and so have not yet re-entered the workforce. They need to get retrained.
That's right. It's Bush's fault. Of course. That's why didn't we think of that? 2007, 2008. Some of this is still a hangover from 2006. Yeah. All that labor force participation rate, mumbo jumbo, 94 million Americans not working. That's Bush's fault. Ever heard of Hurricane Katrina? Sure. Iraq War? That's Bush's fault. And you put your hands together if you're Obama and you leave the stage at another successful economic fraud press conference in the books. Here's May, Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Great to have you on the program. Hello.
Thank you, Rush. I've been listening to you since 1988.
Wow, you're a lifer. That's year one. Thank you so much.
Indeed. 2 points. First of all, I was a little surprised that Bernie Sanders didn't attack Hillary for the Clinton. I think it's the community, get a house with almost no money down thing from when Bill Clinton was president that kind of started the whole hedge fund thing that, he didn't mention Soros contributing to her campaign. And then the second thing, and I'm going to hush after I say this, is we have to get some of the lightweights out of the Republican campaign, or we're going to lose to either a criminal or a socialist. And I do wonder what your thoughts are.
Well, wait a minute. You need to name some names. Who you mean the GOP lightweights that have got to go?
Lightweights, if you don't have 10%, because our country, we really decide by March who the president's going to be. So
you think Christie should get out? You think Jeb should get out? You think Kasich should get out? You think Fiorina should get out? You think Rand Paul did get out since Farm Day? Who's left? Jim Gilmore.
Maybe after this week, Bush or Christie. Probably Christie gets out. He's at 2% or 4% or something like that. And all this infighting, I just think it's terrible for our party. There are too many candidates. We need to rally together, or we're gonna have one of these idiots in the White House.
Let me give you a counter theory. All of these lightweights, as you described them, let it be known that it was May, Jacksonville, Florida, described as lightweights. The lightweights you're describing are all establishment candidates, right? So what about?
I don't mean they're lightweights. I mean percentage-wise.
Okay,
in the polls, they don't have very much.
They're bringing up the end. They don't have a lot of support. I got you. You don't mean they're lightweight intellectually. You don't mean they're dumb people. You're just.
No.
You mean the losers, the people in the trailing in. You get them. Here's the thing. What about this theory? What about keeping them in divides the establishment vote and establishment money and keeps it from unifying around a candidate who I guarantee you probably don't support? I don't have a candidate.
I am a Rubio supporter. I think I don't think that in all the times we've had a person running for president that we've had someone be quite so insulting and bigoted to sounding and just angry like Trump. I don't think he has a chance, but that's just my opinion, and you obviously know a lot more than I do.
No, nobody knows who's going to win this. Nobody knows. Like the polling data that's out there now, you can believe it or not, going into Iowa, 13 of those polls were wrong. The recent history of polling is its inaccuracy. Remember, who was it, Gallup, that said they're getting out of the presidential horse race balloting because they've been so wrong? Well, 13 pre-election polls, pre-caucus polls in Iowa were wrong. 13 of them had Trump winning by 4. He lost by 4. The same polls are saying that Trump's negatives are so high nationwide that any Democrat, Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton, would wipe the floor with him. And then they say that Cruz's electability numbers are low. The same polls that are wrong going into Iowa. I look at those polls, particularly those polls, and folks, I have to tell you, to me, they're meaningless. We are barely into February, and we're supposed to make decisions here based on what polls tell us people will and will not do in November. There's not enough data yet. You can't say that whatever the number is, let's say it's Trump, his unfavorable or negative number's 50. Let's just make it up. I don't know what it is. Say it's 50. It's not going to be 50 if he's the nominee. When there's only Trump versus the Democrats, you got to throw the number out. You throw the number out for any of them, Cruz as well. And some of this polling data serves a purpose. Some of it's accurate, some of it isn't. But this stuff that purports to tell us who doesn't stand a chance in November, isn't it interesting? It's always the front runners that those polls are telling us that about. I've always been suspicious of that. In the current case, Cruz and Trump both supposedly have massively high unfavorable numbers. And those numbers are being translated by polling experts as can't win a national election. Hillary Clinton will mop the floor with either one. Really? Okay, so what are we supposed to do? Well, Jeb Bush shows up best against Hillary in our poll. Jeb Bush can't get beyond 3% in the primary. Yeah, but when you get to November, Jeb Bush has got the look. Are you kidding me? And they want us to make decisions now based on that? Isn't it fascinating that our front runner, whoever they are, whoever the front runners are, happen to be, according to polls, the guys with the smallest or least chance of beating Hillary, the Democrats. I smell a huge rat with that stuff. But May, I don't know any more than you do about what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. I mean, there are educated guesses, wild guesses, but nobody knows. I appreciate your call. We'll take a time out and come back and continue with Open Line Friday right after this. People keep shouting this story at me, so let me do it. Here's the headline: Hillary Clinton spending more on polling than 6 Republican candidates combined. Hillary Clinton spending more on polling than 6 Republican candidates combined. She spent $720,000 on polls last quarter. That's as much as the top 6 Republican candidates combined. About $477,000 of the $720,000 that it was spent went to the firm of Joel Benenson, who's a pollster for Mrs. Clinton, Bill Clinton, and Barack Hussein. Speaking, Snerdley, you got to see that there is a story in the Politico today that just fires at Chelsea Clinton. And why in the hell are we still treating 35-year-old campaign aide Chelsea Clinton like a protected 10-year-old in the White House? I mean, it is a really, I won't say caustic, but man, you just don't see this kind of stuff about Democrats, especially the Clintons. This would be akin to having the media back in the days at Camelot. You know, start jumping all over JFK and Jackie O for shielding JFK Jr. I mean, this is really this headline. Why are we treating a 35-year-old campaign aide like she's still a 10-year-old in the White House? Why does Hillary Clinton's kids still get protected? Why can't we in the media go after her? That's basically what the story's about. Anyway, this polling story here. So the guy that polls for Mrs. Clinton and Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, Joel Benenson, gets $477,000 of the $720,000 she's spending. Now, if you think that's something, in the previous quarter, so this would be Q3 2015, she spent $1.9 million on polling. Now, an Obama campaign veteran, some guy named Simon something or other Simon, said there's no way to spend $700,000 in 3 states on polling, which is Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. It's got to be larger setup. They're polling nationally already. Let me tell you what they're doing. $1.9 million, they're spreading the wealth around here, folks. The Clintons are keeping other people in business, for one thing. But beyond that, I'll tell you what I think it is. I think she is such a wet fish. I don't think anybody trusts Hillary Clinton and her instincts in front of a crowd of people. I think they poll everything from what she wears to her makeup to every word she says. Her smile, I think it's all polled because I think everybody knows, left alone, uncoached, untouched, she is a disaster waiting to happen. And I think that's what this means. Here is Sean in Laconia, New Hampshire. Great to have you, sir. Hi.
Hi, Rush. How you doing?
Very well. Thanks much.
Yeah, I'm calling about, you were talking recently about the people who are collecting benefits and carrying on and not working a whole heck of a lot for it. I'm a contractor up here, and seems like the general consensus is we can't find help. And in our area, there's a large number of people who aren't working. Makes it awfully hard to get a job done when...
Wait a minute. If there's a lot of people not working, how come you can't find any to work?
Well, what it is that they're basically, I've figured out that they're making enough to survive, but not making enough, to be able to take a job. So once they take the job, they have to give up their benefits. And so I've had multiple occasions.
I don't think there's any doubt about that with a certain subset of people you're talking about. If you're talking about a difference of 4,000 or 5,000, maybe even 10,000 a year, it may be easier to get it sitting on your butt than to go out and work for an additional 10, especially with the mindset these people have, that the deck's stacked against them anyway. So you're not the first guy, by the way, I've heard with this problem. We got to go. The Carolina Panthers, according to the Huffing and Puffington Post, they are the most unapologetically black team ever in the NFL. Whatever that means. We'll be back. Yes, sir, Bob, back we are on the fastest 3 hours in media. Those are the 3 hours hosted by me each and every day. The Rush Limbaugh program, the EIB network, and Friday, let's just keep it rolling.
Live from the Southern Command in sunny South Florida, it's Open Line Friday.
Oh, there he is. Bob Beckles over at CNN. I didn't know that. Did you know that? I didn't know Bob Beckel went over to CNN. Well, and no big deal. I just didn't know it out there. Telephone number if you want to be on the program, folks. Open line Friday, 800-282-2882. The email address, ilrushbo@eibnet.com. I mentioned earlier that all of the, I don't know what to call it, I just call it reaction, that I am getting after having spoken up for Marco Rubio the other day. Not as an endorsement, I just spoke up for him. As those of you who are listening heard. Yeah, here it is. Grab soundbites 22, 23, and 24. I'm hearing from a lot of people, Rush, Rubio, he's just Romney. Don't you understand that? Romney and Obamacare and Rubio and a gang of eight. That's folks, my attitude on all this. I'm only going into this because I don't want to be misunderstood here. I don't endorse people. I never have endorsed in a primary. And people think that I should, but I don't because of all the reasons I've announced on prior occasions. There's more downside to it than up. I don't control their campaigns. I don't have anything to do with their policy positions or where they're going to go from day to day. When you endorse somebody, you're pretty much locked into what they do unless they do something so bad you have to withdraw the endorsement. What good's that? That's not helpful. Plus, I think the campaign is where the winners are determined, and I've never lived under the illusion that it's the job of the media to pick candidates, either the drive-by media or us. So my only thing with Rubio was I started receiving some emails and just listening to people talk about what a rotten guy he was. And I know he's not a rotten guy. To me, it's no more complicated than not wanting to throw people overboard forever, to excommunicate them. You can disagree with them. You can say whatever you want if you think they're potentially dangerous. Many people think Rubio is not conservative. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's going to be no different than Romney. And you wait, Rush, it's going to all be proven because he's going to end up being the establishment candidate, and they're going to use him. They're going to try to defeat Cruz and so forth. It may well be. But none of this is a secret to anyone. I have spoken admirably of all kinds of people in this race. I have great admiration for many of them. And any of them, to me, are preferable to Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or whoever else. And I just worry that some of these people can get so damaged in the primary that they don't have a chance, if they end up getting the nomination, down the road. So I wasn't trying to stir anything up. I wasn't trying to take momentum away from anybody or transfer it to anybody. There was no grand scheme or design here. And I'm only mentioning this because you can't believe the number of well-intentioned people who are reaching out to me saying I may not have realized what I had done, or I may not have realized what I had said, or I might want to rethink, did you know this, did you know that? And so I just wanted to say, yes, I know what I did. I know why I did it. I said why I did it. I also know what I didn't do. I didn't endorse anybody. And I never do and never have. Now, that's a whole other argument, too, because I have a whole lot of people telling me that I should. If there's somebody so far and away, run away better, that you ought to not just leave it up to the process because you can influence the process. You ought to get in there and roll up your sleeves and just tell us who to vote for. Tell us who you like. Tell us. And sometimes I must tell you the temptation is great. But it's not as though I'm sitting here not telling you what I think. I don't hold back what I think of people or events or policy or certain things that happen here. I also happen to assume that everybody in this audience is capable of making up their own mind, and that you usually do without me telling you what to think. I'm not the one that thinks of you as robots incapable of thinking on your own. That is what the Democrats try to characterize the audience at talk radio as, and I know it's not the case. Anyway, it has become a quite frequent discussion topic on cable news, and in many instances it's at Fox News. So let's go to the audio sound bites here. We'll start at number 22. This is the 5 yesterday. And no, I take it back. The first one is from Gretchen Carlson's show yesterday afternoon called The Real Story. And she's speaking with the political editor at townhall.com, Guy Benson, about Rubio's campaign. She said, a label that Rubio has been given, and I think it's fascinating because maybe in any other race he wouldn't be given this label, but he's been called a moderate. Where do you see that going?
He got a much-needed vote of confidence this week. Rush Limbaugh, on his #1 rated radio program, just went out there and said, look, I don't like this idea that people are calling Rubio establishment. He is a full-throated, legitimate Reagan conservative. That is a very welcome soundbite for the Rubio campaign.
Right. Now, the reaction to that, and there has been much, coming my way. What do you mean Reagan conservative? What do you mean Reagan? What Reagan amnesty? Wait a minute now. Yeah, Reagan amnesty. I wasn't thinking of that when I said it, but there was the Simpson-Mazzoli bill. But be careful what you say to me, because when I think Reagan conservative, did you see Rubio's speech? I've even had people complaining. Rubio, you know what he did? He went out there and he acted like he won after the Iowa caucus. How dare he? But he went on and acted like he won. Based on expectations, he did. It's common. The winner of the Iowa caucus is not often the big story. Sometimes the second or third place finisher is. It's all based on expectations. Anyway, Rubio was first, and the reason he was first, he might have gone out there to hog the limelight. I don't know. But traditionally, the loser goes, and then the winner. Now, in this case, 3 people were going to head out there. And there may have been more. Somebody might have spoken before Rubio. But it was Rubio, and then Trump spoke, and then Cruz, as it normally is. When I've spoken to Marco Rubio, when Marco Rubio has talked to me about what he believes in his future vision for the country and so forth, it sounds conservative to me. Now, I know, you don't have to tell me you're blue in the face, Gang of 8. I understand. Look, I've been seduced by that same crowd. That same crowd. I've told you, starting in 2002, I've had emissaries from the White House descend on me, try to get my mind right on immigration. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me how to think of it. Some members of the Gang of 8 begged me not to call their bill amnesty, because if I called it amnesty, then that would kill it. I didn't get seduced by it. They didn't change my mind, but Rubio, as a freshman senator, did. And he joined the Gang of 8, and it came off that he was supporting. And not only did it come off he was supporting, but it came off that he had allowed himself to be used as a fresh, young Hispanic face in the Senate to try to do the work of the establishment. I'm fully aware of all that. Now, Rubio has tried to tell people it was a youthful mistake, that it's not representative of the thought processes he has now, and who knows? I understand all this is the point. But in saying what I said about Rubio as a full-throated conservative. I'm just talking about his speech on Monday night after the Iowa caucus, his speech at the Republican convention last year, which is a stump speech, a stock speech. He gives it frequently. But more than anything, it was the idea that he's a squish rhino moderate. That I don't see. I could be dead wrong on it. I'll probably hear about that as well. Here is the next bite. This is the next two are from the 5. And it's, let's say, Juan Williams and Brian Kilmeade discussing this whole thing.
Rush Limbaugh says he's upset that people are saying that Rubio is not a true conservative.
I don't like this idea that Marco Rubio is all of a sudden being labeled as an establishment candidate. I know that Rubio's got the baggage of that Gang of 8 bill. I understand that. Marco Rubio is no moderate Republican centrist. I don't see Marco Rubio as anything other than a legitimate, full-throated conservative. Nobody's pure, and nobody is ever free of making mistakes. Now, there are people say that, Rush, you're wrong. Marco Rubio is Mitt Romney. I say, how do you figure that? And what they say to me is, as Obamacare was to Romney, Gang of 8 is to Rubio. And what they mean is, Romney could no more oppose Obama and Obamacare because he was the architect. Romney Care in Massachusetts, and it's true, it was the framework and the foundation for Obamacare. And that clown who wrote it admitted so. I'm having a mental block on this guy's name. We've talked about him constantly. But it's been admitted that Romney Care was the foundation for Obamacare. No question about it. And we did. We nominated somebody in 2012 who, because of that, could not go after the number one reason we were seeking to beat Obama, which was to repeal it. Understand that. So what they're telling me is, well, if Rubio gets elected, he's just going to be the Gang of 8 version of Romney Care. He's going to go out there, and he's already said he's for amnesty and he is for global intervention and this kind of stuff. So we're going to be nominating maybe and electing a guy who at one time said he was for amnesty. You're going to roll the dice, Rush, that he's changed his mind. I get all of that. And I can't explain it, and I'm not trying to. I don't know if he got seduced as a new arrival in the Senate, and these guys put the moves on him and offered him a chance to gain power fast. I don't know. It was a horrible mistake that he made. If it was a mistake, if that's what he really believes. Yeah, Jonathan Gruber, healthcare architect. If it's what he really believes, that's going to be fleshed out in the campaign. And there's nobody better to flesh it out than Cruz, by the way. And they've been having their arguments back and forth on this as to who stands for what position here, where, there, and everywhere. It'll get fleshed out. To me, Rubio's not a bad guy. And I do not associate him with some of the others that we all are automatically attaching to the so-called establishment. Heck, guys, he was at one point, he was the favorite of the Tea Party crowd. Now, the latest rub on Rubio is he doesn't have any achievements. And the best way to stymie some of his supporters, he's got like Santorum and others have endorsed him, and they've been on TV, and then they've said, name one Rubio achievement, and they can't. They draw a blank, and they fumble around. And I'm fully aware Joe Scarborough over on MSNBC, for whatever reason, doesn't like Marco Rubio at all and has been dumping on him every chance he gets for the longest time. I don't know if there's interstate rivalry there going on. Don't know the full story of that. But I hear it all. I'm fully aware of the problems people have with Rubio. Here's the next bite. And this is Kimberly Guilfoyle and Brian Kilmeade reacting to the bite that Juan Williams just played.
What Rush did, he articulated that very well. I think that's a good argument that people should do. I hear he has a lot of listeners. Yes. That people should do if they're trying to support Marco Rubio. That's how you explain it. But isn't it bizarre that every day it's like, who's in what lane? Wait, are you establishment today, but you're not? You're an outsider, but then you're a centrist? I mean, it's very confusing.
That's Kimberly Guilfoyle. Now, as far as the other people going on in the campaign, Trump still leads in New Hampshire, but the polling says not nearly as dominant. This is Nate Silver and the 538 website. And this is the former New York Times poll analyst that the left just loved, and then they hated him when he left and went over to ESPN. But he's been analyzing all this latest polling data, including the most recently released public policy polling national poll, which shows a near three-way tie. Trump at 25, Cruz at 21, Marco Rubio at 21. Trump is down 9 points in the PPP poll since the last one was taken in December. Another national poll from the Morning Consult doesn't give the same impression. Trump is well ahead in that poll at 38%. But that is also down. It's a meager 3 points from the prior Morning Consult poll. Rubio is up 4 and Cruz is up 2. And I think, which poll is it that Rubio's moved into second place? One of these polls in New Hampshire has Rubio in second place with Cruz in third place. And then there's a poll, the Harper poll, whatever the heck that is, that shows Jeb Bush doing better than he is anywhere else. In fact, they're showing the Harper poll showing Jeb Bush at close to 30%. Second place, rather. And I'm just looking at the clock. I've got to take a break here. But one thing about the WMUR poll that's out there today, CNN, WM, that margin of error is plus or minus 7. You can't take anything in that poll with the margin of that big. Right, it's the WMUR TV CNN poll that shows Marco Rubio in second place at 18%, ahead of Cruz. It shows Rubio up from 11 to 18%. Here's the problem with that poll. It has a margin of error, 7 points, plus or minus 7. Who releases a poll with a margin of error of plus or minus 7? This poll does show Trump in the lead at 29%, unchanged from Iowa. Unchanged from before Iowa. Joan in Loma Linda, California, back to the phones at Open Line Friday. Hi.
Hello?
Hey.
Thank you for taking my call. You were talking about Bernie Sanders and Hillary.
Yes.
And watching this. I held my nose and watched it last night.
Yes.
And what occurred to me, is it possible that Bernie is actually their worst nightmare? He doesn't know how to play the game. He honestly believes in it. So he represents all the voters out there who have been drinking the Kool-Aid all these years.
Smoking the dope, you mean?
Yes, and they can't expose him without exposing themselves. For years we've had these, hypocrites run who say one thing and do another. But Bernie's their problem because he really believes in it. And they're going to have to take him out in some way that discredits him.
So you're saying the Democrat Party, they go on and they talk all this socialism stuff but at the end of the day, they're really not in favor of it as much as Bernie is. But Bernie is a true believer and poses a great threat if he wins, and that's why they've got to take him out.
Right, because he does stand a chance of pulling all races, all ages and everything, who really have believed that this was going to work all these years. And by calling it by its real name, they are in a terrible
I'll tell you why it's worrying. I think you're on to something. I really do. But the reason it's worrying people is that Bernie is pulling every freeloader into his orbit. That's who's glomming onto him. Every freeloader, everybody who wants the government to give them everything because they feel ticked off and screwed by the system and so forth. And many of them are young people who've been taught that by their idiot socialist professors. Our last caller has a good point when she says that Bernie is just the real deal, meaning He's not slick. He's not pre-programmed. He's not poll-tested. He just goes out and says what he thinks, and it comes across as real. And as such, they got to be careful how they take the guy out, because he's got something Hillary doesn't have. And by the way, this is true. He has a bond with his supporters. Hillary doesn't. Hillary's supporters are there because she's going to be the one with a D by her name. There may be a small segment of Hillary supporters that are actually into Hillary and really dig Hillary. That's such an infinitesimally small number of people of the total that will vote for her if she's the nominee. She, believe me, doesn't get anywhere near the connection that Bernie Sanders has with his voters. And so her point was that the Democrats are going to take old Bernie out. They've got to be very careful how they do it, because they could so anger Bernie supporters that these wackos, who knows what they might do. You know, go find Ralph Nader and ask him to run again. Or some other silly third party vessel. She has a point about that. Now, there's a story here from Daniel Greenfield at Front Page Mag, which actually is just a story about an AP writer in Vermont who covered Bernie Sanders for 28 years. And what is this guy's name? This guy's name is Chris Graff. Graff, covered Bernie Sanders 25 years as the AP bureau chief in Vermont. That probably meant he's the bureau chief and reporter. I mean, how big a staff could they have had for Vermont? So this guy was all over Bernie Sanders 25 years. And his take on Bernie Sanders is that he has no social skills. Now, you figure AP, this guy's got to be a liberal Democrat. A, he's with AP. P, he lives in Vermont, so he's got to be in the same ideological school as Bernie. And he says Bernie Sanders has no social skills. He has no sense of humor, which, by the way, is the same as Hillary. She doesn't have a sense of humor. She doesn't know how to make you laugh with her. But apparently with Bernie, it's really bad. This guy, Chris Graff, who covered him 25 years, says no social skills, no sense of humor, quick to boil over, has a very bad temper, and furthermore, well, I can't, two other terms he uses to describe him, I can't repeat here, but, okay, he's a penis, and a, what else? It's a penis, and he's, the exit hole. You go, okay, that's what he said. This guy covered Bernie Sanders for 25 years. And for these reasons, this guy said the word some people use to describe Bernie Sanders' attitude toward his employees was abusive. So here you have a socialist with no social skills who abuses workers and have no sense of humor. Sounds just like Joe Stalin to me. Sounds like Lenin to me. Sounds like Marx. Sounds like all the rest of these guys to me. But his supporters think, oh, Bernie, he does have that bond. There's no question about that. Here's Jake in Annapolis, Maryland. Jake, glad you waited. Great to have you here, sir. Hello.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Rush. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
So my comment is that I think that America should adopt the Nordic style, the Nordic model, like they have in Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland. We have a welfare economy. There is more equality in those types of countries. There is universal health care. People's health is better. People live longer there. There is much lower unemployment, much lower rates of childhood poverty, much better education. The standard of living in these countries are phenomenally better than in the United States. And I think that we could learn a lot and we could benefit if we adopted some of the policies that we have in these countries.
Well, that's exactly the Bernie Sanders platform.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Yeah, I'm supporting Bernie Sanders.
Oh, you
full disclosure.
There's just one problem, one overall problem. There's just one. Gee, I hate to do that. There's just one little problem with it.
What's that?
Denmark and some of the other Nordic, Scandinavian countries have discovered in the last year or two that it doesn't work. And they are reforming. They are reducing the size of their welfare state economies. They are reducing benefits, particularly with this influx of refugees now who are demanding to be fed, clothed, medically treated, taken care of. But I'm not kidding. I'm trying to do this as politely as I can. They are all reforming. And I'm not going to say that they're becoming market economic countries, but they are really, they can't afford it anymore. They can't pay for it. They're in deep, deep doo-doo. The standard of living argument, too, is a little bit of a stretch. Their populations are not nearly big enough to have a real honest comparison on standard of living. But I got to tell you, I just have to tell you out there, Jake, that there is not a country on the face of the earth that has ever created a higher standard of living for more millions of people than the United States of America until Democrats are elected president, and then we have problems set in. But other than that, back to the phones open line Friday. It's Cody in Portland, Oregon. Welcome, sir. Great to have you here. Hi.
Hey, thank you, Rush. How you doing?
I'm very well, sir. Thank you.
Good. I'm just calling to let you know back in October you sent me your books, the children's books. I have two daughters, 3 and 5, and you told me to kind of try it out and see if they like it because they were younger. But I just wanted to call and let you know that they absolutely enjoy them. My daughter, who's 3, you sent the horse Liberty.
Yeah.
She just loves that horse. Sleeps with it. Loves holding it while we read the books, and just wanted to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you for calling to say so.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm flattered you went to the trouble to get through here. It takes a while. You've been on hold for, I guess, some time. So thank you very much. I'm gratified. 3 and 5 is a little beneath the target age group, which makes it even better. What all did we send you?
You sent the Brave Pilgrims. I think it was right before the last one came out. So there was 4 of them. You sent the 4 with the plush Liberty doll.
Oh, great. Well, look, Cody, I really appreciate it. Those books are a project unto themselves. They're I tell you what it is. It's all about trying to teach the truth of American history before college professors, even high school, get hold of these kids. I mean, you look at Bernie Sanders' support. Folks, a lot of his support is millennials, young people who are, they're openly, they'll tell you, they know what socialism is and they like it. Say, how can that be? And had a story last week, didn't get to it in very much detail, but they're being taught it. They're being taught it. It's not that they're being entrapped or fooled. They're openly embracing it. And that's not good. It's just not good. So, Cody, thanks. Make sure they keep reading those books as they get older. I thank you so much for the call. Okay, Huffington Puffington Post. Super Bowl on Sunday. The Carolina Panthers and Denver Broncos. The environmentalist wacko method would say Carolina. Predator, big cats versus Broncos. Broncos, bucking Broncos and horses, but they're not predators. And horses, they allow themselves to be ridden by human beings. They allow themselves to be abused by humans. No, you got to go with the predator cat. Environmental wacko. It's tough when you got 2 animals going. How do you choose? That's how you do it. The Huffington Puffington, and by the way, that I think is correct. The Panthers are favored for a reason, and that is the Denver defense is where this game is going to. If they can't stop the Carolina offense, I don't know that the Denver offense can get in a shootout and stay with them. That's on paper, and I happen to agree this season with the game shakes out on paper. But Huffington Puffington Post has a story. The Panthers are the most unapologetically black team in NFL history, and it's awesome. Now, what does this mean? Well, here's what they say. The culture of football is such that a league made up of mostly black men is supposed to comply with certain standards created and enforced by mostly white men. Ideally, the players would act subdued in public, celebrate their achievements quietly, and speak in a manner that avoids the spotlight. The Carolina Panthers haven't done any of that this season. On the way to a 15-1 regular season record, in the first Super Bowl appearance since 2004, the team has had fun and has been fun to watch. They talk loudly, they dance loudly, they celebrate loudly. But they've done something significant along the way, too. They have embraced, demonstrated, and exuded aspects of their blackness in a way that few predominantly black teams have done in the past. They have been wonderfully, unapologetically, proudly black. A lot of credit should be given to the coach, Ron Rivera, for empowering the players to be them black selves. The only Latino coach in the league. Look at the way these libs identify people. Only Latino coach in the league, Rivera knows what it means to stand out. So I guess, reading this, these black players on the Panthers are shooting the bird to the white power structure of the NFL, which says, behave yourself, be polite, don't overdo it celebrating the Panthers. Just screw you. And they're celebrating and they're dancing and they are being their blackness apologetically. And that makes them the most unapologetically black team in the NFL ever. Huffington Puffington Post. Not me. I'm just reading what the latest batch of liberal media sports drive-bys happen to be saying. I never realized that black people were so different from everyone else. Thank goodness we have the left to remind us of that day in and day out, like that story in the Huffington Puffington Post. Have a nice weekend. Debate Saturday, football, Super Bowl Sunday. Which you're going to watch more than the other?